All right, so the next dealer I ended up buying from, I picked a whole pile of stuff and put it together and put it all in this bag. So everything in this bag and the one item in this bag I got for 30 bucks. Let's just go through this bag real quick. All right, so we got some nice little scales. Here's another little 4-inch scale, just like the other one I picked. Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Yeah, a little bit better shape. Here's a 3-inch scale, same series. This is a Pioneer branded scale, 6-inch, made in the USA. I've never heard of this brand. So the number 3503, Pioneer. Fishtails. We got a kind of stain. It's a Brown and Sharp. Yeah, that's cool. That's a good old Pratt from Greenfield, Massachusetts, number 438. I don't think I've had one of those. This is an interesting old thickness gauges with a hardened tempered blade. And it also has a little ruler on it. But it just says thickness gauge, hardened and tempered blade. But no manufacturer's name anywhere on it. Oh, maybe on the blade itself. Nope. No namer. Little thread pitch gauge. Ooh, that's an early Craftsman one. This right there. 2 of these little Starrett indicators. Both indicators seem to be in good working order. They're mounted on these unusual little mounts. They're not magnetic. That almost looks like it was like ground or lapped. So I don't know what these came off of. They also struck me as unusual because of the colors of the faces. I think these probably both were identical and maybe one is faded. I don't know. So these are both LS Starrett indicators. They're both number 81-111s by the looks of it. But what's cool about them is that they're also both branded Pratt and Whitney aircraft. They say like high 10-22 or high low 22. I don't know. And they're both 0.0001, so they're both 10,000ths indicators. There's actually even numbers stamped on the side of these little hold downs. Pair of Lufkin dividers. These are nice. These are Union tool dividers of Greenfield, Massachusetts. So that's a more historical pair. I'm sorry, scratch that. Orange, Massachusetts. A Brown and Sharp 648 long feeler gauge set. Hey, you know what's neat about these? Look how big the numbers are on them. They're a little easier to read, I think. That one's got a really bent one there, but anywho, that's kind of neat. The heck we got here? B&S gauge. Could that be B&S for Brown and Sharp? Or could that have nothing to do with Brown and Sharp, and could that just be... Yeah, this is general. This is a general, number 310. But what is the purpose of this? Ah, okay. So it's American or B&S gauge. So in other words, a Brown and Sharp standard back in the day? Interesting. Here's another nice scale. What's cool about this one? It's a 6-inch, but what's cool is it's marked S&B Company, Boston. So another one I've never heard of. S&B Company, Boston, Massachusetts. And this little slice of heaven here, this is a GT&D, Greenfield, Massachusetts. So this is a Greenfield tap and die tap wrench. In great condition. It's a real little one. And this is a number 0. It's either a number 0 or a number D. I got a feeling that it's a number 0. And then this one item here. So all of that plus this one item made the 30. This is in a separate bag for protection because this also has an indicator on it that has no crystal on it. But this is what I picked up, and I still am not positive what the heck this is for. So I kind of took a chance on this thing. So this is marked dial sync, made expressly for Brunswick engineering. The indicator seems to work perfectly fine. Okay, it's marked here 127 degrees. And on the business end, it's got this thing. So, is this some sort of like a chamfer gauge, or what is this thing? Manufactured by Brunswick Engineering Incorporated, Chicago. Set to .029. Seems pretty specialized. This is interesting that it says made expressly for Brunswick Engineering Company, but then on the back here it says manufactured by Brunswick Engineering Company. So maybe this indicator was made expressly for Brunswick Engineering Company by another company, and then Brunswick Engineering put it on this device and basically are claiming that they're the manufacturer of this whole unit. Hey, how do you like that? I guessed correctly. It's a chamfer gauge. It says countersink gauge / chamfer inspection gauge. And this company is still in business. The Brunswick Instrument Company. So that is the interior one. And then there's actually, they make digital ones now. And then they also make the external. As far as being able to value this, I could tell you this. These are very expensive brand new, but on the used market, they're all over the place. And the problem is that, for one thing, apparently they're made very special. You order them by size. So this one is, according to the face there, it says 127 degrees. But on the back here, it says it's set to .029. I don't know if that means you set this to .029 or what the heck that means. I have never used one of these before. And it begs the question, is this worth sending out, having it cleaned up and new crystal put on it? Or is it just better to just, sell it off? I don't foresee myself having a situation where I need to precisely measure the chamfer of 127 degrees. Next up, I picked this micrometer from a dealer for $5. It's an old Starrett 436 1 to 2 inch, but it was only $5 for a Starrett, and the lock works, the friction thimble works. It's got a lot going for it, actually. It's just a straight thousandths micrometer, not a tenths micrometer, but that's okay. I like how they cut some felt in here to kind of protect it. That's one of the earliest Starrett boxes I've seen. This says Roy's Young Private. That's interesting. I don't know if they mean private as in like none of your business, or do they mean private as in like his rank? And then that same dealer, I picked this General Punch set, S75 General Drive Pinch Punches. I got this set for $5. What I liked about this that I thought was kind of cool was somebody modified this. I guess they didn't want the lid coming off if you put it in a toolbox. So what they did was they added, I'm pretty sure that this is not stock. I've had a few of these cases with these punches, and I've never seen one like this. And the punches are actually in pretty darn good shape, even the super small one. And then for some reason, again, as far as modifying things go, for some reason, whoever had this set, they also have a place for a drill bit to be parked in here. So I wonder what this guy was doing. Kind of work he was doing that he needed that size drill bit a lot. But this is kind of cool how they did this. So I kind of like that aspect of doing that. So I might keep this set for myself. I don't know. Haven't decided yet. Then I hit another dealer, picked through all his trays and junk and everything, put together a big pile, and got everything in this bag for 20 bucks. Brown and Sharp wire and cable gauge. Actually, this is for sheet and plate inch steel. These usually have a part number on them, I thought, but this one does not. What do we got here? Oh! Another, well, last word style indicator, but this is a Nork. Nork? Nork USA model 305. What the heck? That is another new one on me. Huh. It's a total ripoff of the last word, right? Wonder what this is branded. Well, this looks like it may have been reground by somebody. So I don't know if this originally was a Starrett, or who knows, maybe this is all, maybe Nork ripped this off too. That is really something. Nork. Seems to work fine. Oh, look at this. Little snap gauges. Lufkins, set of 4 with a little bit of light surface rust on them. Oh, I'm going to make somebody a really good deal on these. A random indicator clamp and rod. Ah, anybody know what that is? Has nothing to do with surgery. This is an extension leg for a pair of dividers. And I actually think I might have a random one of these from a toolbox buy from like years ago that I never got rid of. And what you need is you need a pair of them. You stick them on the legs of dividers. I don't see any name on them, but I don't think the other one that I had was marked either. Another scale. Oh, I got a couple of scales in here. What do we got? We got 1, 2, tree. Tree, nice little scales in here. We got a C309R, a C310R, and a C305R. So those are all satin chrome. They're all Starretts. Cool beans. Hook rule. Unfortunate. Somebody really... this is Private Young again. Engraved the bejesus out of that thing. Number 604R. Starrett hook rule. Alright, let's see what else we got in here. Another set of dividers. 2 more sets. Another interesting find. These are badged Foremost. Interesting logo with the number 4 in a circle with the word most. Foremost brand, USA made dividers. And these are Starretts. Oh, so there's a pair of these extensions right here. Do I have the 4th one? No, I do not. Okay. This has got to be the smallest surface gauge I've ever bought. Look at that sucker. And it even had a rod and a little itty bitty scriber to go with it. It's almost like a toy, like a model. Well, if somebody made this as a project just for giggles, they did a damn good job. Can't find any markings on it whatsoever. Here's another one of these little scales. Another Starrett one. Another 3-inch. The centering head for a smaller size blade by the looks of it. It's got this gold paint on it. Something tells me that that's not original. Oh, this is clearly marked Starrett. And I think I could see the black paint underneath. Yeah, this is a Starrett center head. Probably from a 6-inch blade that somebody painted gold. And this is a Starrett square head from a 6-inch blade, but this one is missing. Well, it's missing a lot. It's missing the vial, probably the plug that went in the end here, the guts. I don't know what you can do with that. Here's another one of these little gauges. This is standard music wire gauge, Brown and Sharp, Providence, Connecticut. Providence, Rhode Island. I've never seen one of these. Music wire gauge. How little it is. Most of these types, this style of gauge that I've seen, most of them are this size. And we have one of, actually a few of these little micrometer heads. This is a Starrett 463. I took all the ones he had. And they're all Starrett 463s. Oh, you like them apples. And last item is very early indicator. And it still works. This is a J.R. Reich Manufacturing Company of Dayton, Ohio, and it's got a patent number on it. I've had a couple of these before that were branded Verdict, so this is a little bit different one. So that might be a nice collectible one for somebody. All right, spotted this box, and it's marked Central Tool Company of Cranston, Rhode Island. I've gotten some Central tools in the past, and the quality isn't bad, but they just have really low resale value, so I wasn't paying this much attention. And then, you know, I looked at it real quick, and then I realized, oh, well, actually, it's got a federal indicator in it. This indicator's missing the little thumb wheel right here to tighten the bezel. The indicator, other than being the crystal being foggy, actually seems to work perfectly fine. And we've got a nice little assortment of attachments to go with it here. We've got the clamping nut, the rod. Here's the tool post fixture. And then this is an interesting thing because I've only come across one other of these, this style that does this. Yeah, there's the little cap that would go into the indicator, into the top of the indicator when this wasn't in position. Somebody just threw this indicator in here. It doesn't belong to this set. The indicator that was originally in this set, you would take the cap off the top and you would put this down inside there, and what that would do is that would almost like convert this indicator from a drop style indicator to a dial test indicator of the type with the finger. Good thing I only paid $8 for this set. Still worth the $8. These little accessories in here. Came across a guy who had a box of circuit breakers. I spotted this breaker. This is a 60 amp, 220 volt. This is a square D QO style breaker. Okay, I have all QO panels in my house, so I knew that I could use this. I also bought a QO sub panel because I'm going to add more power to the shop. So when I pick up good used breakers, I mean, I have no reason to believe this is bad. I like to do that. I was going to make a deal on buying several. I asked how much if I buy a bunch of them, you know, but then the problem is I started digging through the box and realized this was the only one out of all those breakers. The rest of them were all different brands and different styles. So I said, actually it was only the one. And then as I was getting ready to leave, he said, you know what, take it. He gave it to me for free. Oh, we're coming down to the wire here. I'm troubled by the fact that I can't find two items. I don't know how I misplaced them, but I ended up scoring a Starrett 459 clearance gauge in the red plastic pouch for it was marked $25. I ended up getting it for $15, and then which is a really good deal on one of those. And then I also got a 436 micrometer Starrett micrometer in the plastic red case, so a more modern one in pretty good shape for $15. So that was a pretty decent deal also. Those are the only two items I can't seem to put my hands on. But anyways, let's move along with the other stuff that I do still have. I ended up scoring these two items off the same dealer for $7 for the pair. Item number one is this boring bar, which is clearly marked JDG Tool Company of Brooklyn, New York, and it's got a patent number on it. So I'm not familiar with that particular manufacturer, and I probably would have trouble figuring out exactly what it uses for an insert if it weren't for the fact that on the other end there appears to be an insert present. So it looks like on this end we're missing the hold down. And this is what it looks like with the insert present. But that's a funky little insert right there. So I do not know if I'm going to be fortunate enough to find any more inserts for this thing. But mainly I wanted this thing, which was a mystery item to me at the time when I bought it. So I figure if I got this for $2, I'm into this thing for $5. And it turns out, I mean, what intrigued me was this thing says INDICAL, INDI-CAL, which made me think it had something to do with an indicator. And apparently, from what I was able to gather, it's either for transferring a larger dimension, like on this side between these two pins, to an indicator mounted here, or it's for actually calibrating indicators, if you can believe it. And I'm not sure exactly how that would work. So I guess we should do a quick Google search on this little sucker. Oh, so apparently it's an internal bore or groove gauge. So these little pins right here could go into a, if you reach down into a bore and you want to get a ID of a groove down in a bore, you would stick this down in there, and this would go in the pin. These two pins would go in the groove, okay, and this would transfer the measurement over to an indicator mounted up here like so. So if I just take this off, so there we go. Dovetail mounts right in that clamp. I probably don't have that lined up exactly the way it should, but you get the gist of it. Okay. Pretty cool. So as cool as this little doohickey is, it's not exactly huge money. This is made apparently by the Flex Bar Corporation, and they're still in business today, and you can buy this doohickey brand new for $225. But if you look at the used ones on eBay with the case, trade from $25 to $50 depending on the condition. So loose like this, it doesn't have a huge amount of value. I'm probably going to end up just keeping it for myself. I came across this right here and was able to convince a dealer to give me $1 for it. Give me $1 for it. I was able to convince a dealer to take $1 for it. Funny thing was, I saw this dealer earlier in the day and tried to get this for $1, and he wouldn't let it go for $1. And then I happened to come by the same table later in the day, and I saw he still had it, and then he took my $1. So my thinking was, the reason why I wanted it was because I know I had an Indicall that was missing something, but I couldn't remember what. And I thought, for $1, I'll take a chance. This might be what I need to make a decent Indicall out of the pieces I have. And then went through a bunch of drawers and boxes and stuff at a table and picked this lot right here and got this lot for $5. And there's actually some pretty nice stuff in here for $5. Start right off the bat with this nice, what looks to be a Starrett indicator clamp. So the idea would be, you see the groove there, this would clamp to maybe the bed on a small lathe, and then give you a vertical post to which you can mount another beam and have an indicator come off of it. I actually don't see any markings on this one, but that'll be cheap money for somebody. And then what else we got in here? We've got, well, that's a hole indicator tool. Okay, so that would mount on a post, and this would allow you to reach into a bore with one end and have an indicator out here on the other end. So you could use like a drop indicator, for instance, to actually indicate how true a bore was running. This also has no markings on it, but could still very easily be Starrett and just doesn't have any markings on it. This is another little indicator tool. This goes on a drop indicator. The larger indicator would have the proper diameter shaft to go right in here like this. And then what this does is now that allows this type of an indicator to get a measurement off of this direction here. So basically it changes the direction. This does have some sort of part number on it, but it doesn't appear to be anything I recognize. A9-R1 beats me. Well, in checking Google for that number, I was able to find a couple of these up for sale used, and they're all described as hole attachments, but no manufacturer. Definitely not Starrett. Here is a small clamp that looks like it might be for a on a height gauge to attach a scriber, and along with this I found this scriber. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if this lived in here like that, and the two of these originally lived on some manufacturer's scriber. Height gauge. And I found this standard. This is a JT Slocum Company of Providence, Rhode Island, 1-inch standard. I got one more item to show you in this video. It's not really machinist related, but I'll show you this one item, and then I'll talk a little bit about some stuff I picked at this particular flea market that has nothing to do with machinist tools. So I'm probably going to do a separate video on that, because I hit the mother load on some other stuff. Well, I'll get to it in a second. Alright, so here's the non-machinist related item I picked at the flea market. One of the things I love about going to that flea market swap meet is because even though it's at the Thompson International Speedway, it's mostly motorhead related, automotive, power sports type of stuff. You always have a good assortment of just other junk that people haul in to get rid of. And you never know when you're going to come across something like this. And because the people who would be looking for something like this don't tend to be the same people who frequent these kind of sales, you generally get pretty good prices on stuff like this. So what this is, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is an RF signal generator. And this is made by a company called Heathkit, which back in the day, Heathkit was a company that sold test equipment, and you could buy it one of two ways. You could buy it fully assembled and working, or you could buy a kit, a Heath kit. And what you would get was you would get all the parts and all the instructions on how to basically assemble it. So it was a learning process. You learned about electronics as you assembled the test gear that you were going to use to work on electronics. Heathkit even made a color television, believe it or not, that you could buy the kit and build your own color TV. They had some ham radio, amateur radio equipment. But this particular device right here is an RF signal generator. And what this does is this generates an RF frequency, and it has a range on it of anywhere from a low of approximately 320 kc, which stands for kilocycles, which we now would call kilohertz, which is 1,000 hertz, 1,000 cycles per second. So 1 kilohertz is 1,000 cycles per second. So 320 kilocycles is 320,000 cycles per second. And then when we get up to 1 MC, that would be 1 megacycle, or 1 megahertz as we call it now, 1 million cycles per second. And this goes up to 110 megacycles. So those of you who happen to notice, when you tune in your FM radio, if you still do that, when you listen to 100.1, what you're really listening to is a radio station that's broadcasting on a frequency of 100.1 megahertz. So what this does is this creates an artificial radio station. It creates an RF signal that can be injected into a receiver so that you can diagnose problems with the receiver. So you can either have just a signal with no audio on it, or you can have a external audio. You would flip this here to external audio, and you can actually put in a external audio on the carrier, or internal audio. And what that does is it gives you a tone, and it generates a tone internally that would be broadcast on the frequency that this is set to. I got this thing for $7, which I think is a great deal, even if it doesn't work, because it's so darn clean. I mean, this thing is in really nice, pristine condition as far as the case goes, and the cord isn't all crapped out and everything. I mean, it just really nice condition. So I'm really happy with this. I have I still have a weak spot for what we call in the collector's world boat anchor radios. In other words, large old CB or ham radios. So I want to get back into working on those and playing around with them. So I want to build myself rebuild my test bench that I had years ago. So it wouldn't hurt to have a signal generator. I figured even if I have to do some work on this, I'll fix it up, tune it up, and I'll have a good RF signal generator. And because this goes up to 110 megacycles, it will easily cover that 27 megahertz region where a lot of the CB radios that I screw around with are actually working. So anyways, this is one of the electronics related items that I picked up at the sale, and then I'm going to do a separate video on the other stuff. I'm not going to cover it here, but just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, what's coming. Right there early in the morning, I came across a couple that were there selling some stuff, and she had her dad's ham radio equipment there, and they said that it had been sitting for years. Dad passed away. They wanted to get rid of the stuff, and I got the whole lot for $50, and I got a couple of really interesting transceivers. But I got some really cool looking stuff there. And then, as if that wasn't strange enough that I would come across that stuff, later in the day I came across a vendor who I saw with a chrome lollipop microphone at the Zagrey tractor flea market of all places. And when I asked him how much he wanted for the microphone, he explained to me he didn't want to sell the microphone because it goes with a radio he had that he meant to bring with him, but he forgot. And then he started telling me about the radio, but he wasn't sure what the brand was, but it really intrigued me because it was an old CB radio. Well, what happens when I get to the International Flea Market? I run into the same guy. And what's he got? He's got the radios. Not just one, but two. One of them's incomplete. The other one is complete. We made a deal. I scored those. Those radios were, when I was a kid growing up, and I used to play around with CB radio, these radios were considered some of the best radios around. They were very expensive. That was like the dream radio if you were into CB radio. I ended up, years later, I ended up scoring one of the models, and now I just scored another one. It probably is in really bad shape electrically, but hey, I think I paid cheap enough for it that it's worth maybe doing something with. It might make a nice video to do a restoration on something like that, right? Who knows? Anyways, we're going to call this video a wrap. I hope I didn't ramble on too much about that electronic stuff, but, some of you guys might find that interesting. Take care, and I'm glad you came by for the ride.